Umpire Mag feed, and I can't wait to go across the pond to listen to Across the Pod, fresh out of Wales. Special stuff. Cheers.
Hello everyone, Andy here, and here's what you can look forward to in today's episode.
In today's episode, in Team Season Preview 25 out of 32, I was joined by Atlanta Falcons fan Rob Monk as we look ahead to the team's upcoming season. Rob discusses the hiring of Kevin Stefanski as head coach.
Out of the head coaches that were available this year, I think Kevin Stefanski is one of the better hires.
I ask Rob about the quarterback battle and who he thinks will start this season.
But I don't think there's a clear favourite right now.
And much more as Rob predicts the team's overall record in our win, loss or tie segment. Hope you all enjoy.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. I am as ever your host today, Andy Davis, and we are here for another team season preview, and the team in focus today are the Atlanta Falcons. And with me, I've got a returning guest. He is back on the show today, Falcons fan Rob Monk. Rob, it is good to have you back on.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on as well, Andy. It's generally when I'm on here, it's obviously because I like punishment, talking about how bad the Falcons are. But yeah, appreciate you having me on again. And how are you doing?
Yeah, I am all good, mate. All good. We are quickly rattling through these season previews now, so it's we are on final stretch, and yeah, just looking forward now to NFL season beginning.
Yeah, definitely. It's always a long off season. Sort of seemed to have gone a bit faster than normal this year. It seems to have come round faster than normally. I'm sat at home waiting like, oh, it's so long. But yeah, this year seems to have flown. So looking forward to it returning in a couple of weeks' time, properly anyway.
Yeah. I mean, we're recording this now on August the 8th. With the preseason has begun, albeit just one game so far in that Hall of Fame game. I mean, what a game that was! But yeah, I can imagine for you, it's flown by a lot more for you recently because since we last spoke, you've had a kid, you've become a father. So congratulations first of all, and I imagine that must have sped things out quite a lot in your countdown to the season beginning.
Yeah, well, yeah, thank you very much, and yeah, it definitely has. She's 3 months old now, and 3 months have absolutely flown by. Don't know where the time's gone since she was born on the 28th of April. But yeah, it's great, completely different, but absolutely great at the same time.
And have you got a plan to when she gets old enough to put a Falcons jersey on her and make sure that she follows suit?
Well, I don't know whether I want to put her through that, to be honest, making her a Falcons fan, but yeah, I'm sure we will. Like when the Falcons have been at London, Becky's happily come down as well a couple of times, and we've been over to America and seen the Falcons and stuff. So yeah, I'm sure that we'll be able to drag her into it in a life of sporting misery.
Character building, isn't it? It's character building.
Definitely, yeah, especially when you're a Sheffield Wednesday fan as well.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's another story in itself. That's another the talk in itself. That we could be here all day with all their problems, which seems to be over for now. But moving on to the off-season and the ins and outs of the Falcons summer. So the main ins include the likes of Tua Tagovailoa, Austin Hooper, Jahan Dotson, Cameron Thomas, Nick Folk, Channing Tindall, Samson Ebukam, Olamide Zaccheaus, Trevor Siemian, Brian Robinson Jr., as well as the likes of Wanya Morris. And then you traded for the likes of Sidney Brown, Mason Smith, and also Wanya Morris. And then in the draft, you took Avion Terrell in the second round, Zakaria Branch in the third, Kendall Daniel in the fourth, as well as the likes of Antonio Thompson, Harold Perkins Jr., and Ethan Onewa. And then finally, in terms of players who left the team, this includes the likes of Kirk Cousins, Darnell Mooney, Cardwell Hodge, Devin Tompkins, Brendan Frazier. And yeah, that is obviously all the main outs. We obviously did also allow Drake London to sign a contract extension. So overall for you, your take on the team's off-season?
Yeah, it's been interesting. Obviously, we got rid of Raheem Morris and quite a lot of his coaches as well, which was needed. In terms of the outs, I was particularly disappointed to see Caden Ellis leave the team. I think that's going to be a big loss for us. Also, Tyler Algier, completely understand. I think he's got the caliber to be a starting running back for somebody in this league. Shame for him that he signed for a team where he thought it'd be RB1, and then they've gone and signed the top running back in the draft, which probably puts him in the same situation that he was in at the Falcons. But I think, Brian Robinson's probably not as good, but as a backup to Bijan, semi-like for like. Caleb McGarry also retired at right tackle, which, came as a bit of a shock. Had some injury issues, was out all last season. But I think we can muddle through on that one. In terms of the ins, I think, essentially what they've done is we didn't have an awful lot of cap space. We didn't have a first-round draft pick this year because we had 2 last year. And I think the concentration's been generally on trying to add more depth across the entire roster and in every position. And I think they've done that. I don't think it's been a free agency where we can say that we've made huge strides. I think it's been pretty much more of the same whilst adding depth across every position. I think that's probably by design. I'm not saying that they're going into this season to write it off. But as cap space starts to open up next year and the year after, I think it was just a case of what can we do this year to try and improve marginally whilst adding depth, and then probably mainly look at next season as where we can really hopefully start pushing back on.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a tough decision in kind of, we said it before on the Saints preview, how it is probably, I think, the worst division in the league in terms of quality of teams, but in a way that makes it maybe more competitive, because while you look at NFC West, amazingly strong, but you've got the one team in the Cardinals who are going to be whipping boys of that division. You've got 2 strong teams in the AFC East, Patriots, Bills. Then you've got 2 teams that are going to struggle in the Jets and Dolphins. There's many divisions like that where you've got 2 or 3 teams that are really good. It makes it a really good division. And then you've got one team that maybe isn't quite as good. And I think the NFC East will be the same thing. But the other end, all 4 teams being, I think, quite competitive. But I think with the NFC South, with how I think all 4 teams are not, I don't think any of them are going to be Super Bowl contenders. I don't think any of them are going to have at more than 10 wins. So I think it's a division up for grabs, and I think you guys certainly, have the players available that could do that. But there's also definite weaknesses in this team, like there is with all the other 3 teams in this division.
Yeah, I think, the NFC South's probably been the dumpster fire of the NFL for the past couple of seasons at least, if not longer. And we saw last year with the Carolina Panthers going from the worst team in the division to then winning it. And Bryce Young took some steps forward, and the roster as a whole took some steps forward, but they're still not brilliant. They've continued to improve this offseason. I don't think the Saints are very good. They did improve the back end of last season when Tyler Shook came in at quarterback, but still I think there's probably question marks over him. And I think the Bucs, who have probably been the best team in that division in recent history, in the previous years except for last season, I think they were the best team in the division, but they still weren't great. They were just better than everybody else. I think it's been frustrating for the Falcons because I think we could have been the team that had been the best of a bad bunch, if you like, in a couple of those seasons. When you look at the talent that we've got across our roster, obviously when we let Arthur Smith go and brought in Raheem Morris, and things, went through 2 new offensive coordinators in 2 years because neither were really very good, and we just didn't utilize the talent that we'd got. Without taking huge steps forward from a quality perspective on the roster, I think if we can utilize the talent better, then that should hopefully help from a coaching perspective to push us on a little bit.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that will be the kind of the big key thing of that is the quarterback room. And this is where it gets really interesting, because you've got Michael Penix Jr. already in the building, drafted 2024. And then you've got Tua Tagovailoa, who is arriving on a minimum deal, obviously most of his salary being paid by my team, the Dolphins, which I really hate the fact that we're doing that. But he's there as well, has his problem, but he's got experience, more experience than Penix. But I don't think there's a clear favourite right now. Some people are saying they think Michael Penix will start and should start. Some are saying Tua should start and will start. Both of them right now are both injured. And right now, Cooper Rush, who was signed also as an emergency kind of quarterback to come in and fill the slot, whilst them two are suffering on the sidelines. I want to ask you who you think starts week 1, but I want to ask you who you think starts week 18 and week 17 and down the stretch when it gets to the important time of the year.
I've got an answer in mind if both stay healthy. And if both stay healthy, then the answer is that Tua starts week 1 and Michael Penix sees out the season and finishes week 18. I think that is the way that it will pan out. Michael Penix is back on the field now, but he can't do 11 on 11. He can't do contact. So he's extremely limited in what he can do. And that's not helping him through training camp, whether he's actually fully fit and signed off as fit. But I think missing that time as well. I do think that Tua will start week 1. But I think as soon as Penix is ready to go, I think he will take the starting job back. I think the big question mark over our season, and as I've just said, the ability for us to utilize the talent that we've got, a big part of that on offense is going to have having a quarterback. Michael Penix, it's so many injuries through college, injured again last season. Can he have a full season where he stays healthy? And even then, if he can, there's still question marks over, there's no doubt that, he's got the arm strength and the ability in some cases, but he's definitely struggled since he's been in the NFL with accuracy and reads. So there's a question mark over whether he's going to be a QB1 in this league long term for the points I've just mentioned and the injury history. And then there's also question marks over if he is a QB1, what's his actual ceiling? Is he somebody that can push on and be a top 10 quarterback in the next couple of years? And I think, everybody probably looks at that with high skepticism. And then Tua, we know what Tua's like. He's, not lived up to the hype and expectations at Miami. Somebody who's struggled with different types of injuries, a lot of concussions and things like that. So there's also question marks over whether he can stay fit for an entire season. And when you've got 2 injury-prone quarterbacks, both with question marks over their actual quality as well, it doesn't put you in the best situation, so to speak. And I think that is going to have a massive, massive impact on how our season goes and how successful we are.
Yeah, it's a weird one. It's Michael Penix. I think obviously the whole reason the whole of the controversy we talked about on the show, where also he was taken months after you picked up Kirk Cousins, paid up all that money. Kirk's no longer there. Penix might not be the starter by week 18. So within a couple of years, that decision to take him 8th overall, I don't know how that looks now. It's an interesting one, and I don't have faith in Tua. I think everyone knows my thoughts on that. But I do think as well, you give him a situation where he's going to be playing in a dome stadium for, at least what you think about potentially all your home games and all the Saints away game. There's a chance that he could really ball out in those situations. But my worry, I think a lot of people have this worry of him is when it's not going his way, when the weather changes, when it's Tua in the cold and the weather. Tua was always good against below 500 teams when it's nice and warm, mostly at home. But his struggles often were when he was in outdoor weather, like in Buffalo or Green Bay late on in the season. But also when that first read gets missed, so like often there's a case where, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, if those reads aren't available or he doesn't quite get it off straight away, he struggles to find, and improvise, find a way to get it done. And I do worry for him as well. He's going to have obviously Drake London, Kyle Pitts to throw to. But my issue is, like it was with Hill and Waddle, when he can't get to Drake London, when he can't get to Kyle Pitts, how is he going to manage with that? So it's, that's a big fear with Tua. And I think there's a lot of question marks around him as a future starter. Had a good season, got the money, and seems just completely divert from what he was doing so well. But Kevin Stefanski's come in as a head coach. That's one thing we have not mentioned yet. And, he's a guy that has proved to be a good coach. I mean, 2-time coach of the year in the NFL. I mean, first of all, are you confident that he can get the best out of Tua or Penix? But also, what were your thoughts on the hire when he arrived in Atlanta?
Obviously, it was on my short list of people that I would have taken. I think it's relatively smart. Somebody a bit older, somebody who's been there and done it. Arthur Smith had been about quite a bit, and Raheem Morris has been around the block a couple of times, had a couple of head coaching gigs where it's not really worked for him. But the cycles these days generally tend to focus on who's the next big first-time head coach who's, balled out as an offensive coordinator for 1 or 2 years and, he's relatively young and never had that experience as a head coach. And I think going the opposite way, and I think Kevin Stefanski is different to Arthur Smith and Raheem Morris. Obviously, Raheem Morris is more of a defensive head coach anyway, but I think he's got that clearer identity as an offensive head coach. I think it's smart. As you say, he's won Coach of the Year 2 times. And I don't want to judge him too harshly on what's happened at the Browns, because we all know that the Browns are just an absolute car crash of an organization. They've got about 25 quarterbacks and they can't decide who they want. One of them's got an awful lot of money owed to him, and they've drafted multiple in previous years, seem to be making an absolute mess of the quarterback position. And I think the ownership in particular there is, not helping the situation. So I'm okay with it. I think hopefully it should help if he can put a system together that is going to help the likes of Michael Penix and Tua to try and get the best out of them. Then we'll see where we go. And I think you can see that from the front office's thinking. I think the reason that we went after Tua is so we could have 2 left-handed quarterbacks in the room, which I think is a smart thing to do. I think if you're going from, like last season, Kirk Cousins to Michael Penix, you're going from a right-handed to a left-handed. The tackles are having to change from 1 minute you're defending a blind side, the next minute you're not. So I think having 2 left-handed quarterbacks is smart. Maybe it's just unfortunate that it's Michael Penix with his injury history and Tua with his injury history and recent performances is probably not something that inspires an awful lot of confidence. But I think, out of the head coaches that were available this year, I think Kevin Stefanski is one of the better hires this year. So, yeah, I'm okay with it. And I think, we just ride the wave this season and see where we go.
Yeah, it's an interesting QB situation. A lot of upside, but also a lot of downside. You can see they've both shown they can do it in the league, particularly Tua, but also we've seen them both massively struggle. And Stefanski, I think the fact he got the Browns back to the playoff for the first time in years shows what he can do. And I think that he'd be hoping he can break some sort of it's going to be a long streak for you guys now. You haven't either made the playoff or won a playoff game, I don't think, since the conference championship. Am I right in saying that? They haven't won a playoff game since the conference championship in one that he made a Super Bowl?
So we made the playoffs the year after in 2017. But yeah, I think 2018 onwards sounds about right. 8-year stretch out of it, I think, off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it now. The Pro Football References, the guide on the Falcons playoff history. So yeah, obviously the 2016 season made the Super Bowl. We all know what happened now. I'm not going to put you through that again, Rob. But you beat the Packers in the conference championship, and then you beat the Rams actually the year in the wild card round, 26-13, and then you lost to the Eagles the following round. My memory from that is late game. I think was Julio Jones didn't get in bounds. Was that it? Or didn't? There was something about. I remember Julio Jones having some sort of moment in the playoff in that game. Either he dropped the ball, or he couldn't get in bounds at the end of the game when he caught the ball in the end zone. So a long time for the Falcons. We do head on to win, loss or tie. I want to get your quick touch on James Pierce Jr., a guy that you ended up trading with for the Rams, which they ended up obviously. What did they do last year with? I can't think what they did in the draft, but you gave. I can't think what the Rams did now with your pick, but either way, you gave the Rams a pick to go and get James Pierce Jr. last year. He had a good rookie year, 10 sacks, led all rookies as well with 10.5 sacks, and of course led the team as well. But there's been some off-the-field problems recently. So back in February, he was arrested and charged with aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, fleeing and eluding police, and resisting an officer with violence and misdemeanor stalking. Now, a lot of talk is about whether, obviously, I think we all know he's going to get some sort of suspension. Now, Falcons president and CEO Greg Beadles has said that he expects a resolution from the league in the next few days, and this was released an article 2 days ago. So probably by the time this podcast is released, it might have come out some news regarding him. But for you, Rob, I mean, they're saying the prediction is going to be 8 games. Are you expecting more or less games he'll be out for this season?
I think in my mind, I have seen the 8 games being touted. In my mind, I had sort of minimum of 6 in mind. So I think 6 to 8 is probably where I would expect something like that to land. I know when he was drafted last year, there were certain question marks over his character and attitude, not necessarily to the extent of, what nobody could have foreseen what has happened. But there were some character issues. There was talk about, the Falcons giving away a first-round draft pick in 2026. Don't really agree with that. I think we just took our draft pick a year early. We still had 2 draft picks. We just took them both last season and gave up this year's. And I think it, based on how the season ended, it proved to be the right thing. James Pierce led all rookies in sacks with 10.5. Jalen Walker looked really good as well. Unfortunately, he's now out for the entire season. So we're looking like going into the season with neither of last year's 2 first-round draft picks. Michael Pierce Jr. potentially for half of it. The talent is clearly there. He's maintaining his innocence. Obviously, there was some video footage at the time which didn't show an awful lot. But obviously, I'm not condoning any of the stories that have come out whatsoever. I think if it is true, and it probably looks like it is true, from what I've seen anyway, then that's not good. And he'll deserve the suspension at a minimum. Obviously, from a sporting perspective, that hurts us massively as a team, especially with, as I've said, Jalen Walker going out there. And I think the frustrating thing is last season we did manage to put together a bit of a potent pass rush. We were high up in the league in pressures and sacks, and it looked like something that would lacked for years was starting to slowly get fixed, and now it just looks like it's all gone again. But obviously we can see what what the front office can do in free agency. Obviously, we're not going to replace James Pierce or Jalen Walker, but we might be able to get somebody through the door that can, at least contribute.
Yeah, that's I think it might be a thing in a way that helps maybe some of the that maybe weren't going to play as much this year, show what they can do and maybe give them the chance to unleash their potential. But we'll head on to our final segment, which is win, lose or tie. So, of course, for those of you that aren't familiar with this segment of the show, every fan that comes on will predict their team's overall record by going through each game and answering with the simple answer of win, lose or tie. Now, Rob, you came on a year ago and last season, and the Falcons went 8-9. Do you by chance remember what you predicted 12 months ago?
No, but I'm guessing due to I can remember being relatively optimistic last year. I'm going to say 10-7.
Yeah, you predicted 10-7, so only 2 games off.
Yeah, and I think we definitely left 2 or 3 games on the table as well that we shouldn't have lost. So, as is the Falcons way, although I suppose every team probably will look back and say their team did the same as well. So, but yeah.
Well, week 1, you face a trip on the road to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Rob, win, lose or tie?
I've gone for a loss on this one.
So then week 2, your first home game of the season, you are hosting the Carolina Panthers.
And I've gone for a win.
So then week 3, you are taking a trip to Lambeau Field, and I think this is on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah, it is, and I've gone for a loss.
Well, then going on to week 4, you are facing a road game at the Superdome against the Saints.
And I've gone for a win.
Okay, so then moving on to week 5, you are facing a home game against the Baltimore Ravens.
Loss.
So then week 6, you are once again at home, the second of 3 straight home games. You're hosting the Bears.
Win.
So then week 7, you are playing the 49ers at home.
Loss.
Then week 8, you are facing a road game against Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Loss.
Well, week 9, we should say for this one, Ole, as you take a trip to Spain and take on the Bengals at the Bernabeu.
This one's a little bit optimistic, but I'm going to go for a win.
Now I realise you've got kids now, so you may not have the time to go. But have you got any plans to go out there to see the Falcons in Spain?
We tentatively spoke about going. Harper will be 7 months at the time, I think, will she? And we spoke about maybe taking one set of grandparents with us who could look after her for a couple of hours while we went. But yeah, I don't think it'll happen.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, you come back from Spain in week 10 and you take a trip back home against the Chiefs.
Loss.
So then week 11 is a bye. So week 12, you are traveling to Minnesota and taking on the Vikings.
Win.
Okay. Week 13, you're now in December and you host the Lions.
Loss.
Well, this one should be interesting. Week 14, you are traveling with your head coach to his old team and the Cleveland Browns.
I mean, it's got to be a win for multiple reasons.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be dying to win this game. I mean, if I'm honest, as a franchise, I mean, the amount of struggles they've had as a team, the fact that if they're firing their 2-time coach of the year in a team which is, for me personally, I was stunned when he got fired because I thought he was not really. Personally, I didn't feel he was a problem in that team. But then he was also part of the front office that did trade for Watson. So, yeah, there's that as well. Week 15, you are facing the team who also played in Spain last year, the Commanders.
Gone for a loss.
So in week 16 is a home game against the Buccaneers.
Win. I think we'll split those divisional games with the Bucks.
Then your final home game of the season comes against the New Orleans Saints.
Gone for a win.
Finally, your final game of the season, you're taking on the Panthers on the road. Rob, for the final time this episode, win, lose, or tie.
Loss.
So that means, according to your predictions, you're going to finish 8-9.
Did I put 8 and 9? I had to count it up as 9 and 8, I think, when I did it, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, if we recap the fixtures, we got week 1, you said you'd lose to the Steelers, 0-1. Then you've got Panthers win, 1-1. Packers lost, 1-2. We've got Saints win, 2-2. We've got Ravens win, 2-3. Bears win, 3-3. Niners lost, Buccaneers lost, 3-4, 3-5. Bengals win, 4-5. Chiefs lost, 4-6. The Vikings win, 5-6. Lions lost, 5-7. Browns win, 6-7. I'm not going to make the joke. Week 15, Commanders loss, 6-8. I've got Buccaneers win here, 7-8. Saints lost, 8-8. No, Saints win, 8-8, and then Panthers lost, 8-9.
Yeah,
is that right?
There we go. Must be then. Yeah, another season of mediocrity like the last few.
You never know. You never know. That might be enough to win you the division. The way it's gone the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I don't know. I think it's definitely going to be tight again. I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a really interesting division, but for the wrong reasons. But there we are. That is the end of the show. So, Rob, first of all, a huge thanks for coming on today.
No, you're very welcome. And like I say, thank you for having me on. Always enjoy it. Always good fun. Except for the bits where we talk about the Falcons, which is the majority of it. But yeah, always a pleasure to come on and chat with you, Andy.
Well, great having you once again. You've always got the honour of being the first podcast that ever invited me to be a guest on. When you did your former podcast, you did invite me on to the show. So I always thank you for that, giving me the my first ever NFL podcast ever. This is before I created Across the Pod. So yeah, you and fellow friend of the show, Fred Patton and Dan Hughes, invited me on, and that gave me the kind of the itch to create my own podcast. So yeah, they were. Yeah, a lot to thank that podcast for. But no, in the meantime, this has been the Across the Pod NFL podcast. I have been, as ever, your host today, Andy Davis, our Atlanta Falcons season preview. Our guest in Falcons fan, Rob Monk. And we'll see you guys for our next season preview. See you then.